Hey, good afternoon, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are.
Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon to everyone and warm welcome to all of you. Uh, Myself, Dr. Mahendra Patai, Head, University Research Department. On behalf of Maharashtra University of the Health Sciences, it's my privilege to inform you that today's session on how to plan your research from idea to manuscript is being conducted as a part of Dr. Daulatrao Aher lecture series, which is organized every Thursday at the same time. The program is designed as a series of 5 lectures, and today marks the first session of the academic series. I would be happy to inform that the session will be monitored by our respectable registrar, sir, Dr. Bangal, sir. And the session is essentially focused on the research questions and how impactfully you are going to publish the manuscript. Also, I would like to acknowledge Dr. Shnunkala, who is going to take care of the introductions and the question answer session taken care by the Dr. Aher sir, where the YouTube link is also been available. With this, I respectfully request Dr. Registrar sir, Dr. Bangal sir, to kindly deliver the welcome address and formally open the today's sessions. Thank you, sir. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. I audible, sir? Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So, yeah, very good morning, and extremely sorry that I'm not able to attend the webinar from the university. I'm traveling right now to some regional center, but I heartily welcome all the participants to this webinar, which is being conducted by Dr. Betsy Joseph, who is an accomplished researcher and academician and a senior research consultant. Secondly, I also welcome and I wish all the best to all the participants so that they also get a feeling that MUHS is constantly striving towards excellence as far as research and the ethical aspects of research are concerned. And I wish that all of you take home uh, 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 fresh new lesson from the university and from Dr. Betsy Joseph, madam. Secondly, I wish to inform that this topic, how to plan your research from idea to manuscript. When we read this topic from idea to manuscript, uh, one should also remember that the research is not designed, should not be designed in isolation, but your research should be for the readers, for the reviewers, and for the publishers. So this is when we talk about publishing a research, it's you can say that the topic may be reframed as how to plan your research from manuscript to idea rather than from idea to manuscript, because ultimately it's for the journals or for publishing, for the readers and reviewers. And the two most important aspects of any research, that is data and analysis. When you talk about data collection, good data beats any sophisticated analysis. And when the data collection is faulty, or if it is not properly done, then it cannot be rescued by any statistics. So data collection as well as the analysis are both are important. And when we talk about analysis, think about analysis before collecting the data. Before starting collection of data, you think about how it has to be analyzed, and then proceed. So that's why I call it that you can call it a reverse from manuscript to ideas. The true impact of research is not when the data is generated, but when knowledge is communicated clearly and credibly. So that's my message, and I wish the webinar all the best. Thank you, sir. Please continue the webinar. I will attend it later on the link. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Over
Thank
to
you
you.
very much, sir. Thank you for your valuable inputs. I would now like to introduce our speaker for today. It is my guest. It is my great pleasure to honor to introduce today's distinguished guest speaker, Dr. Betsy Joseph, Madam. Dr. Betsy Joseph, Madam, is an internationally accomplished academician, researcher, and scientific leader with over 17 years of global experience spanning clinical practice, academia, and healthcare research consultancy. She currently serves as the director and scientific lead at Integra Research Craft LLP India, where she provides strategic leadership in translational research, publication strategy, and scientific communication for academic institutions, CROs, and also biomedical startups. In parallel, she is a researcher at the University of Helsinki, Finland, and a professor at Savitha Dental College and Hospitals, SIMATS, India. Dr. Joseph Madam is widely recognized for her pioneering work in periodontics, regenerative therapies, low level light therapy, photodynamic therapy, and salivary biomarkers. She is also a respected leader in systematic reviews, evidence synthesis, and AI enabled scientific communication. She has led and supervised multiple international and multidisciplinary research collaboration across Finland, Spain, Saudi Arabia, and India, and has served as a principal investigator on funded clinical and translational research projects. A prolific researcher, Dr. Joseph Madam has over 70 publications in high impact international journals. She is deeply committed to research capacity building, actively mentoring faculty and students, and conducting well structured training programs in research methodology and scientific writing. Her academic excellence has been recognized through several prestigious honors. She is a Fellow of the International College of Dentists, Fellow of Pierre Fauchard Academy, and member of the Faculty of Dental Surgery, RCPS Glasgow. She is also a recipient of competitive research grants from RCPS Glasgow and the University of Helsinki. Beyond her academic achievements, Dr. Joseph Madam is a thought leader in bridging science, education, and industry. With a strong commitment to strengthening research ecosystems and empowering clinicians and academicians to translate evidence into meaningful impact. Most recently, Dr. Betsy Joseph Madam has been elected as the treasurer of the Biophotonics and Laser Group of the International Association for Dental Research, a global non-profit organization, and she is also a trainer for Clinical Research Fellowship Program and the Medical Writing Certification Program conducted by the Indian Dental Association headquarters. Today, we are truly privileged to have you with us, Madam. Please join me in giving a warm and enthusiastic welcome to our esteemed guest speaker, Dr. Betsy Joseph. Over to you, Madam. Thank you.
Thank you, respected Registrar Sir Rajendra Sir, Mahendra Sir, and Dr. Shrinkala for your warm welcome and your kind words. So, may I share my presentation so that we can start today's session? Could you please confirm if my video, my
Yes.
slide is shared and I'm audible?
Yes,
Thank
yes.
you. Thank you. Thank you, Mahendra sir. So good afternoon to you all and a warm welcome to our session, our first session where we will deal with planning our research from idea to manuscript. This is the first part of the 5 session we are planning on publishing healthcare research in high impact journals. So we were going through various queries that you had. And so the way I would like to have this session is we have certain slides that cover the basics of planning our research from idea to manuscript. Please make a note of your queries that you have, and we'll take those questions in the end because maybe some of your questions are already covered in the slides that are coming up. So as Registrar Sir said, that we should start from end towards the beginning, from manuscript to idea. It's such a great way of framing goals for us. So here it is. So in case, if this is what we finally want, if this is how we want our research to be published, how do we go about it? That is what we will look at today. So I'm very grateful for the kind words and the guidance that Registrar Sir has given initially, and we will be following this session on the same lines. So if you want your paper to be your research to be published in an impact journal, in a top tier journal, what all things do we have to do? So we will see it under 4 headings. How to have a clear idea and frame a research question. How to plan a realistic research flow and protocol planning. Understanding the standard manuscript structure and avoiding common errors. These are planned for today, and the remaining sessions will be covering the other relevant areas that is needed. This is my Google Scholar link and my ResearchGate links. So that will give you an idea of the research that I've been involved over these years. So first, for us to publish a final paper, it has to start with an idea. It has to be an idea that is talking about a research problem, and we have to identify the idea and frame it into a research question. That is our first part. So how do we do it? In fact, many of the queries that we got in our Google form was, how do we start? I don't even know where to start. So here it is. So when you plan to do a research and you have absolutely no idea of what you want to do, identify a broad area of interest, something that you're very interested in, something that you're very passionate about. It could be a clinical problem that you saw, it could be an academic issue, or it could be a problem related to public health. Now, after you identify a broad area, you have to narrow down your focus, because we can carry out a very good research and prepare a high quality manuscript only if our question is focused. So what begins well is half done, already half done well. So we have to narrow down our focus. How do we narrow down our focus? We look around what has been already done in that particular area and what more needs to be done. For that, we identify literature gap. We go to major databases in biomedical science, major databases. If you're a beginner, just start with PubMed. Just start with PubMed, identify the areas where this particular research has been done, read through the literature, especially the methodology result and the discussion and the end of the discussion to see what has been done, what needs to be done more. Now, PubMed is a traditional database. Along with that, you can also take the help of certain AI-based literature review tools like Elicit AI, Consensus AI. There are many other AI tools which we will discuss in another session, but the idea is to have a broad area of interest and narrowing it down by searching literature at various major reliable platforms. Once you identify the literature gap and you're getting a clearer idea of what you want to do, also do a feasibility study, because sometimes we get very enthusiastic about the topic, very involved in the topic, and we do not identify the feasibility of it, the time, the cost, the skills, whether your investigators, the principal and the co-investigators actually have those skill sets. Do you have the resource available? So these are the things that you have to identify when you are doing a feasibility check. What are we discussing? We are discussing how to frame a research question by narrowing down our options. And after we have an idea, ask yourself, is this idea novel? Is it relevant? Is it answerable? Is it ethical? And is it actually of interest? So we have an acronym called FINER: feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, relevant. These are the 5 points that your research question should answer. So let's look at it. Let's look at an example after this particular slide. So from the idea, we should narrow down our query, our question into a focused research question. A question that is feasible. So you have a clear idea of the number of participants, the technical expertise that is needed, the resource that is needed, the time duration that is involved. It should be interesting and motivating. Your study should be novel, should provide new information. So the kind of idea that you're translating into a research question, which is the first step of doing research to publish your paper, it should be feasible, it should be interesting, it should be novel. It should also be ethical. So the study that you plan should ultimately also get ethical clearance if it's a kind of study that requires ethical clearance. And it should add to the advancement of scientific knowledge. It should ultimately improve practice and even influence policy if possible. So this is the feature. These are the features, the FINER, FINER, you could have an acronym, to identify whether your question is focused research question or not. We look at a bad research question and we look at a good research question. A bad research question would be something like you want to do a study about periodontal treatment, gum disease treatment in diabetic patients. And the question you're doing is planning is, does periodontal treatment help diabetic patients? Okay. Now let's see if it is a good research question or not based on our finer criteria. Is it feasible? It's very vague. Timeline is not mentioned, no description of timeline or any setting or the type of population that you would like to aim. Is it interesting? It's broad but unclear. It's not very focused. Novel? Uh, Studies have already been done, so you really question the novelty of this. Ethical? Is it ethical? Well, in this question, the intervention or the comparison group is not very clear. So we have to refine it further. As such, this won't qualify as a good research question. Is it relevant? In this form, it's not really possible for anyone to translate it into practice or policy. So let's see how to translate this particular question into a good research question. We can translate the same question into a good research question by giving more elements to the research question, the population, the time frame, the comparison group, and the outcome that you plan to measure. So let your research question get refined into something like this. In adults with type 2 diabetes and early periodontitis, does non-surgical periodontal therapy compared with no periodontal therapy improve? You're mentioning the outcome, you're mentioning the population, you're mentioning the intervention, you're mentioning the comparison. So your outcome is improve HbA1c level and periodontal clinical outcomes over 6 months. So I hope you saw how search question that is not so good, not defined, can be refined into a good research question. And this is very important, because if you do not have a good research question, your outcomes that you're defining will get affected, your methodology will get affected, then will your result and statistical analysis will get affected. And if you are working on a bad research, you cannot come up with a good manuscript. So that was the first part of identifying research question from an idea. Now, once you have a research question refined and finalized, the next thing that you have to do is to have a research workflow and a protocol planning. Now, that is actually a detailed process. Very often people hurry to identify a research question and skip this particular section and straight away go and conduct a study. So please don't do that. What we would like to do is first identify a research problem by doing preliminary literature search and refine a research question. That is done. And you could be also generating a hypothesis. After that is done, we have to prepare a protocol that has to be sanctioned, verified and sanctioned by your scientific committee and later on by an institutional review board. So you have to prepare a detailed protocol in which you mention the study design, the number of patients that are going to be there, the sample size calculation, the type of setting, all the details based on the protocol template that will be available in your institution with the scientific committee. If a protocol registration is needed, for example, if you're doing a clinical trial, you need to do a registration if you are in India, you have to register it on a site called CTRI. Or if you are doing a systematic literature review, you will have to register it on a site called Prospero or any other similar site. So these are the steps that you will
be more happy
follow.
if you leave. Then OBC की जगह OBC लाए ना.
Please.
Please बताने sir, please.
Thank you. Thank you. After we get ethical clearance to conduct the study, we also have to plan our data collection very well. Planning and spending time in identifying our research study outcome and the data that needs to be collected to answer your research question, the way in which your data will be collected and managed is very important. It's very important to plan these things ahead. It is important to do a proper data analysis and a pre-analysis, statistical pre-analysis planning before data is analyzed and interpreted. only after doing these many steps will you actually come to manuscript preparation. Now, with manuscript preparation, does your work get over as a researcher? No. After manuscript preparation, you have to select the journal. You have to have a submission strategy, how to select, where to submit, which all documents to submit, etc. And once your paper gets submitted, it does not easily get accepted. There are times when it gets rejected. Sometimes they will send you revision comments. So how to review and how to reply to reviewers and how to get your paper published and disseminated. So these 12 steps together is what translates into getting your idea, starting from your idea to publication. So today we will look at the main points of these things. Before we proceed, you saw that during data collection and data management plan, there's also a step called pre-analysis, statistical pre-analysis. This is very important and often ignored. There we have to decide our statistics before we see the results. It's not that you see the result, see the data, and then you plan the statistics. So we have to decide our statistics with the help of a biostatistician of what needs to be done once you have identified your primary outcome, secondary outcome, and the data sheet that will be collected. Clearly define your primary and secondary outcome. Identify variables that need to be analyzed and how they will be coded. Handling of missing data and outliers should also be planned before you get your results. You also have to see if possible subgroup analysis or sensitivity analysis will be conducted or not. Before getting your result, you also have to identify your significance level and the confidence interview that you will work at. And if applicable, planned adjustment of confounders should also be planned before you see the result. So these things should be done before you prepare your manuscript. So you have an idea, you have done literature search, you have discussed with your mentors, you have gone through previously published research and previously available guidelines and clinical scenarios, and you have identified your research question. There you have made sure that your research question is focused. You could use the finer concept to verify and narrow down your research question into a focused research question. After you have a good research question, you have to go through the research and protocol planning workflow that we discussed and have a pre-statistical analysis plan also ready. Then when you get your data analyzed by your statistician and get the results ready. The results in tables and results in figures. And once you have these things ready and once you have an idea of the journal that you plan to submit, you can start your process. Having said this, very often we don't have an idea of where we would want to submit a paper. At the initial stage. The reason could be that you're a beginner or you're waiting for your supervisor to give you a go ahead sign, or you are waiting for your funder to respond to you. In that case, you could start with an empirical format and then refine it once you identify your journal. So let's look at the fine details that you need to include when you're preparing a manuscript. And when you are preparing your manuscript, this is very important to understand that writing is not just a reporting. It is structured communication. The way I'm trying to communicate with you. So when I'm trying to communicate with a person, I'll understand who's my audience and I will prepare my communication based on that particular audience. Same way, when you're preparing a manuscript, there are different forms of manuscripts, right? So when we are preparing a manuscript, don't just think you are preparing a report. You're preparing a scientific communication. You're actually doing scientific storytelling, having in mind your audience. Is your audience a general practitioner? Is your audience a specialist practitioner, or is it a regulatory authority? Or if you're writing for not the typical manuscript, but if you're writing for patients or general public, always remember the audience and then structure your documents according to that. Now, when we say manuscript, we might always think of a long format, long manuscript with say around 3,000 words and 30 to 40 references, 5 to 6 tables, multiple figures, etc. Well, yes, that's what we are going to discuss today. But before that, if you're a beginner and you want to start writing and publishing, but you do not want to start with the long format, there are certain short formats which I thought of discussing with you. For example, a letter to the editor. For this, you don't have to do a research. When you read a already published paper, you want to give critical comments, probably an analysis that was done differently or a different methodology that you would like to suggest. So you could start with letter to the editor. It's a short format of writing, and all details for formatting each type of your manuscript will be available on the journal website under the heading Guide to the Authors or Author Guidelines. So letter to the editor could be one document. Commentary note could be another evidence-based write-up that you can do. Sometimes it's invited by journals. Sometimes it can be submitted as an unsolicited paper. Short communication or brief report is something that you can do. For example, you're doing a study and you come at it's pilot study and you want to quickly report it. Probably you're the first person doing yours is the first study in the world or in your region, and you want to report it before others report. So you could actually submit your paper instead of original research long format manuscript. You can submit as short format manuscript, which is again suitable for pilot studies, negative results, or maybe you want to prepare a note about a particular methodology. Same way, clinic case report, clinical image also can be submitted as a manuscript in certain journals. And technical note or methodological notes can also be submitted in journals which talk about a particular methodology or a workflow or a new technique that you have found or identified in your lab. Having said that, we will discuss the long format, the standard structure of an original research manuscript, which is written in IMRAD structure. Generally, there are journals that do ask for submissions, not under these headings, but after introduction, there are few journals that would publish result, discussion, and then methodology given at the end. So always do check with your journal the format, but the typical format is to follow the IMRAD structure, where you would have an introduction, the methodology, result, and discussion. So if you have identified a journal that you want to publish, you would go to the particular journal's website, go through different sections, and you will look for this particular section, which talks about author guidelines. When you click on that particular document, all the types of manuscripts that are accepted in the journal will be listed. The format will be there. Some journals even give you a template, the number of words, the number of tables, references, the quality of the figures, everything will be mentioned. So please do go through the author guidelines of the particular journal that you want to submit. If you're not very sure where you want to submit, still randomly go to a top tier journal and read through it so you have an idea typically what is expected when you're preparing script. You're preparing your manuscript, there are certain sections. We will go one by one through these sections and see what needs to be added so that even while you're doing your research, you know these things need to be done because they have to be mentioned in the methodology, in the result, in the discussion. So let's look at it. Essential parts of a scientific paper are title page, the abstract. Abstract can be structured or unstructured, usually 200 to 250 or maybe 300 words. Again, check the journal website for the exact written number. Introduction, where you are going to spark the curiosity in your reader. You're telling the reader why, what was already known, what was a gap in literature, what you did, why you did. You're giving a reason. You're building the context, creating the context. Then comes the materials and method, where you're actually telling what was done, how, what, where, etc. In the results section, you mention the results that you got, what you found in your study. In the discussion section, you are mentioning the importance of what you found and comparing it with previously published literature. Graphical abstracts are optional, but are asked by some of the journals nowadays when you submit. Other than these, there are acknowledgement and reference sections. We will look at each section one by one now. So again, when you look at this, understand why each section is written so that the scientific storytelling is done correctly in your research paper. Identify who's your audience, but before that, you should understand that before that particular audience reads, it is the editor and the reviewer who will be reading your paper. So write it in a way that their questions, their queries are also answered. We'll look at it one by one. So in introduction section, you have to motivate the reader. So you're telling the why. In the methodology section, you are telling the how, because you are enabling replication. If somebody who reads your paper wants to do your study, the paper should be able to give details of that particular methodology that you have mentioned. Then the results section, you are sharing the data, because in the results section, you are telling what you found out, and the significance of the study is mentioned in the discussion section. There you are suggesting interpretation. You give credit to those who helped and from where you got your references. So that come under the acknowledgement and reference section. Although title page is not the first thing that you would prepare, I have listed it here because when you read a manuscript, this is the first page that appears. So it should be given as a separate page when you are preparing and submitting. Clear informative title should be there, and preferably the study design is mentioned in your title. Keep a note of the word count that is allowed for your particular title. Mention the name of the authors, their affiliation, and the ORCID ID. You don't have to mention whether they're head of the department or assistant professors. Usually, the author's name and their institutional affiliation will be enough with their ORCID ID and official email. Corresponding author will be one of these authors who will be submitting to the journal and responding to the journal queries. In title page, some journals ask you to include these following headings such as funding sources, various disclosures, word count of the manuscript, number of tables, and number of figures. Some other journals want you to include it in a separate document. So please make a note of this as you select your journal and go ahead. For example, if this is a journal that a manuscript that you're preparing, so this will be your title page. Although it appears like this, the way you prepare your title page will be on a separate document, names of all the authors, the name of the title, the study. So it starts from the type of study, title, author's name, affiliation, whether they have one or two affiliations, you mark those affiliations, and also mark the corresponding author. Then comes the abstract section. Definitely abstract is not what you write first. It's actually done in the end. But as we are discussing in order, after title page, it would be your abstract that your reviewer and editor will read. And it is actually your 30 seconds that will help the editor understand the impact of your study. So the abstract has to be written very meaningfully. It should be an impactful abstract. Background, maybe one sentence, and another sentence about the objective of your study. Methodology could be 2 to 3 lines based on the number of words that's available for you to write the abstract, where important methods, significant, important, relevant methods are described. And you could also mention the name of the statistical test that you have applied. In the results section, you write about the key findings of your study. You have only 250 or 300 words, so you cannot write everything in detail. So write results that directly answer your study objective. And you could write a line or two of conclusion. That would come under the abstract section. Please note that in the abstract section, there is no table given, there is no figures, no references, no disclosures. It should reflect the manuscript accurately, but in about 250 words. If it's a clinical trial that you're reporting, you should also include the registrations number, and funding may also be listed separately, but not as part of the structured abstract that we mentioned. So this is how a structured abstract could look, where you can see the aim, or in some journals you have background or objective. So under those headings, you have mentioned the key findings and the details of your study. But if you're writing a literature review or maybe a case report, some journals would ask you to prepare a unstructured abstract where you will be preparing a similar abstract without subheadings. Introduction section. In the introduction section, we understood that we have to motivate the reader. So when you're telling someone, when you're telling your friend what happened or why you did something, what do? You first set the context. Same way, when you're writing your introduction, first set the context. That's part of the scientific storytelling, giving a context, reading the leading the reader step by step, leading the reader's reasoning. For that, you have to give step by step information. So in introduction, you're giving a background of the problem that you've identified, why the problem is important. You will write few sentences about what is already known by giving suitable references, relevant references, preferably recent references, but some old classic studies can also be mentioned. But after that, in your paragraph, maybe in introduction, you could have 3 to 4 paragraphs. So in the final paragraph, you can say what is the gap your particular study is trying to address. What has been done? What is not done? What is the problem still existing? And your study should come as an answer to that one particular question. So that's how you will frame your introduction, and you will clearly mention at the end of the introduction section. Usually, if someone wants to find out the research objective or the aim of the study, where do you go? You go to the last paragraph, in fact, last 2 lines of the introduction. That is where you would clearly mention your research objective or your hypothesis. In the introduction section, do not present your result. Do not present your conclusion. Do not add excessive or unrelated references. So these are things in nutshell to prepare an interesting introduction so that your reader is interested, understands why you did this, and goes to the next section, which is the methodology section. Every section that you write, who is going to read the section first? Your editor and your reviewer. Although you have aimed it for your audience, keep in mind that it's your editor and your reviewer who is going to read your paper before anyone else reads. So what you should do, always ask yourself, like in methodology section, ask yourself, can this be reproduced? Because your editor and reviewer is going to ask this question while they read your methodology. So in methodology section, explain how the study was done, why the study was done, where was it done, what date, you quote your ethical clearance number, state how you calculate the sample size. Is it a formula that you want to give, or a study that you want to quote? Give enough details so that someone can reproduce it, but not so much of details that your your methodology section runs into 10s and 20 pages. So it's the art of scientific writing concisely yet meaningfully. So you have to mention the ethical approval, the patient selection and eligibility criteria. What are the outcomes you are looking for? This is very important. Your reader and your editor and reviewer should clearly understand from introduction what is your objective, and from your methodology section, what are you actually trying to find out? How did you find out? And where did you do it? And what all did you use to do it? So these are the things that need to be answered in your methodology section. In the methodology section, you will also mention the statistical analysis that has been applied. And after that comes your results section. In fact, result is something that you should have with you ready in table formats and required figures or graphical format before you start writing manuscript. Because if your tables and figures tell a story, can you actually write a very meaningful and impactful manuscript. In the results section, again, the reviewer and editor will ask themselves, are these outcomes reported as planned? So what you're mentioning in the results section should have been mentioned in the methodology, and before that should have been mentioned in the last paragraph of your introduction as the objective of your study. So when you're writing your results section, present your result findings in a chronological order, in a logical order rather, and a chronological order. If you're mentioning about a clinical outcome, radiographic outcome, and a microbiologic outcome in your methodology in this particular order, that should be the exact order in which you are mentioning these outcomes in the results section also. So, present your primary outcome first and then cover all your other secondary outcomes also in the results section. Whether you have negative findings or positive findings, make sure that you report them. Use tables and figures to support the text that you're writing in the results section. Having said that, do not write everything that is there in the table as the results section. So please make sure that you don't avoid, please make sure that you avoid repetition between the tables and the text. Some people take each and every percentage or p-value or odds ratio or any particular value and write it in the text section. That is not needed. You have to use tables and figures to support your text. And in case you have too many tables or too many technical details, you can place them as supplementary materials, supplementary files, and submit it to the journal as supplementary documents. Instead of having 10 or 15 tables, you could have primarily 1 to 6 or 7 tables that directly answer your primary and secondary objectives, and the remaining documents can be submitted as supplementary files. So that was about presenting your result in the form of tables, figures, and text section under the result heading. Make sure that when you're preparing tables, the tables have clear titles, footnotes, and they are not duplicated. Please make sure that your figures have high resolution. Usually 300 dpi is what they will be asking for, is self-explanatory legends, and use the correct units, metrics, or SI units wherever needed. In case of abbreviations, use only standard abbreviations and define all your abbreviations in the first place. So if you're having an abbreviation in the abstract, define it and use the abbreviations in the subsequent section of the abstract. And then when you come to the introduction section, once again, define the abbreviation in the first instance and then use the abbreviations. For all these details, please identify the journal and go to the journal website and read the author guidelines. Please take a look at this table. This is just an example of how we can prepare a meaningful table and properly formatted table. So what you write and how you write is very important. Along with what you write, how you write and how you present it, how consistently you present your manuscript and your data is also equally important in getting your paper move to the next stage of peer review. So here you can see that the outcome variables are listed, the groups are listed, the sample size of each group is listed, the median, mean value, minimum and maximum and interquartile range and p-value are all mentioned. And since 2 statistical tests were they have also mentioned the statistical test, and they have also given a footnote of the short forms that are used in the table. So this is a way of making a complete meaningful table. Now, if you are not very sure about how to prepare a table, always discuss with your statistician and get the table prepared with the statistician's help or by the statistician, and make sure they are presented well in the manuscript. You could also prepare a flow chart to show how your patients were recruited, how the patients were selected and recruited to different groups. This helps the reviewers and the readers understand very well how you did the particular study. So lots to be told about statistics and numbers, but to limit it to few important topics. One example is reporting p-value without mentioning an effect size. So a better way would be to, have a sentence where you are mentioning the mean difference or the effect size and the confidence interval. In this case, it's mentioned as mean difference. The treatment group showed greater reduction. And then in the bracket, it's mentioned mean difference, the 95% confidence interval, the p-value, etc., which makes your statement more meaningful, and it increases the chance of your paper getting accepted by the reviewer and the editor because it's presenting complete and meaningful data. Certain general rules when you're using numbers and statistical values as you prepare your manuscript. When you're writing a sentence and if it begins with a number, it should be spelled. So 35 patients reported. The 35, because it's the beginning of the sentence, should be spelled. Now, if you're writing about numbers less than 10, you would write them in words, no matter where it comes, whether they come at the beginning of the sentence or at the end of the sentence. If those numbers are from 10 or above, you can write them in numbers if they're coming in the middle of the sentence, and you can spell them if those numbers are coming at the beginning of the sentence. There are certain exceptions like 2 mm or 2 meter tape. There, you do not write TWO, you write 2 or 3 million. So these are exceptions, but otherwise, if you are writing about numbers less than 10, it should be spelled. Now, should you put a space between numbers and units? There should be a space between numbers and units. Usual exception would be in terms of percentage or p-value. Again, if you are writing a number, for example, 0.32, that is a correct way of writing and not just 0.32. So you saw how important 0 is there. And again, usually we follow a 2 decimal place system. So after decimal, 2 digits would be enough. But there are journals that are more inclined towards statistical analysis and details where they will request the authors to give up to 3 decimal points. So you have to check with the journal that you're submitting. When you're mentioning p-value, instead of just mentioning p greater than or less than 0.05 or 0.01, it's always better to mention the value of p that makes it more meaningful. So another very important thing is when you're writing numbers to identify significant digits. To identify significant digits of mean and standard deviation. You can see an example. The number of digits in the mean and the standard deviation should be same. 2 significant digits for standard deviation is usually considered enough unless you're dealing with descriptive statistics like height or weight, or if precision is not very important, you can also do with 1 digit of the standard deviation. If you're interested in reading more about different statistical aspects and assessment, this is an interesting paper. I would say you read. It's a CHAMP checklist, explanations and elaborations of statistical assessment in biomedical papers. So we saw how we had an idea and we developed it into research question, and we planned our study, we planned data collection, we collected the data, we analyzed our data, and we are writing the paper. We wrote the introduction to spark the curiosity in the reader. We wrote the methodology section to tell the reader how was the particular study done, where was it done, and what was used. In the results section, we told the reader what was found. Then coming to the discussion section. This is the section where you are interpreting the results. In the results section, please do not interpret, just write what you found. In the discussion section, summarize the main findings. What are your main findings? Again, go back to your introduction and see what is the objective or aim of the study you mentioned. In the methodology section, identify what are your primary and secondary objectives that you have mentioned. In the results section, make sure that those primary and secondary objectives are defined, are described based on the result that you got. Now in the discussion section, briefly summarize your primary and secondary findings. Explain possible mechanisms or reasons for the result. How do you get this? You identify similar studies with similar result or a different result. Read through the methodology of those previously published studies. Read through the result and discussion section of those studies and identify what are the possible reasons or mechanisms that is mentioned, and the reason and why exactly you would have got this particular finding in your study. And when you are writing, you could have one paragraph, one idea style of writing where you are identifying one particular study objective in your paragraph and quoting studies that have been reported, that have reported results in favor of your study, or studies where contradictory results were mentioned. Now, the question is, how many studies do we quote? You could quote 2 to 3 studies which are in favor of or against your study. That should be enough each paragraph. So typically in your introduction, you could have about 10 to 15 references. There is no hard and fast rule. Considering that you are planning a manuscript for 3,000 words and about 35 to 40 references, you could easily afford to have about 15 to 18 references in your introduction section, 1 or 2 references in the methodology if you want to quote particular studies or methods that you've adopted from another study. Result section, you don't have references, then the remaining references can be given in discussion section. In the discussion section, you could highlight what is new and what is important that you found and compare it with existing evidence. Again, ask yourself, as an editor, as a reviewer, what is the question they are going to ask? They will ask, do these claims match the data? Which means they will ask whether your objective, methodology, result, and what you're claiming in the discussion are all aligned. Okay, then clearly mention limitations. Towards the end of your discussion, after we discuss our relevant findings, our new findings, and compare it with previously published studies which are in favor of your studies or could be different from your studies, there is a section that comes towards the end of the discussion that is called strengths and limitations of the study, where you can clearly mention the strength of your study. For example, it's a new study in this region, or the study using this particular statistical analysis, or in this particular region, or identifying this particular research question that was never identified. Along with that, you have to mention limitations of your study, where you will mention 2 to 3 limitations, or maybe 4, whatever limitations you have. Because if you don't identify your limitations, the reviewers are anyway going to identify them and send it back as your fault. So, and every study, it is okay to have limitation. Every study will have limitation. So please do mention your strengths and limitations towards the end of your discussion. And in the discussion, have a section called future implications for future research or clinical practice or policy making. So the reader understands that why you did the study, how you did the study, what you found in the study, and using the results of your study, what are future studies that can be planned, what are the changes that can be made in clinical practice guidelines and policy making. Along with that, it's also important to mention the influence of any key variable if it is relevant in your particular study. So these are the things you should include in your discussion. And what would you exclude in your discussion? Do not repeat results or introduction content. Do not make claims that are not supported by data or results in your paper. Do not confuse statistical significance with clinical significance. And do not discuss any particular benefit which has not been analyzed properly. After you write this section comes the conclusion section, where the way to write an effective conclusion is again to go back to your introduction section and see what is the objective that you mentioned, because your conclusion should directly answer your research question and you should mention your research the answer to your research question that you found in your study. Avoid unsupported claims. If it is not something that was done or found in your study, please do not claim it, and avoid generalization beyond data. If you have done a study in a pediatric patient, please do not generalize it to geriatric patient. Keep it to that particular group. So these are the ways in which we can prepare different sections. Now, is it over? No. There are many other nuances that you have to take care of when you're preparing your manuscript so that you can submit your research in a top tier journal. Coming to references, this particular slide shows the different components of references, and it says how important it is to have each part of the reference written and identified correctly. A particular reference can be written in multiple formats. So if you go to Google Scholar, these are some of the different formats like Harvard style, Vancouver style, and different other variants of that. But to give you a simple example, you can see two paragraphs written. In the paragraph on the left side, the references are inserted in author year format. Bergland et al. 2018, Howe et al. 2019. So that is a one basic form of writing. You could call it a Harvard style of referencing. And you have the other style, which is Vancouver style, where numbers are cited for your reference, and at the end of the reference, your numbers will translate as references in chronological order as they appear in your manuscript. And if your references are given in author year format, as you can see in the left side, in that case, references will be arranged in alphabetic order at the end of your document. Now, you don't have to do it manually. You should be using referencing software. How to use these referencing software? They are all easily, YouTube videos are easily available where you can go through these videos and see how to download them and how to embed them in your Word document that you're working. EndNote would work very well. And if you have access to EndNote referencing software as part of your institution, please use that, or else Zotero works very well. Zotero and Mendeley are free softwares, and YouTube video can help you how to use this particular software in preparing document. What is the advantage? Any editing. So, for example, any deletion, any addition, any change in the format, submitting from one journal to the other, all these changes can be done using software. You don't have to do it manually. So please use a referencing software. There are many other softwares that we will discuss in the subsequent weeks. So after talking about the referencing management, the important disclosure that needs to be there in the documents that you're preparing. Nowadays, AI usage is very prevalent. So you have to disclose about the usage of AI. Where all will you disclose? Typically, you're supposed to disclose in the cover letter. Explain how AI was used. It's not said that AI should not be used. AI should be used judiciously for the things that they are allowed. There is a very good webinar and a PDF available from Springer Nature. We'll also include it in one of our upcoming sessions. So please include in your cover letter how AI was used in preparing the manuscript, whereas maybe you used it for editing the grammar or improving the language or the coherence, but that has to be clearly mentioned. Declare if AI was used for language assistance. In the methodology section, if it was used for any other purpose, it should be mentioned, and it should be used only for what it is allowed to be used. Finally, when you're preparing your final document, just writing from your title page to conclusion is not enough. There are many other documents, submission checklists that we will discuss in the journal submissions day of presentation. There are different documents such as cover letter, title page, disclosure, funding details, etc., and supplementary documents that you have to submit. For all that, you may read author guidelines that will give you a detail of how to prepare each and every section. Now, where does one know what is the actual way of writing each section? What is the actual way of presenting this section? One is to go to the journal website. But even better, a good practice is to go through this particular website, which is ICMJE. International Committee of Medical Journal Editors. There are a lot of information available on this as and when time allows. Please do browse through it. And if professors are attending this, please encourage your postgraduate students also to explore this and discuss this. So I've just highlighted one particular section. There are many other sections given in this document in this website called ICMJE that will tell you how to prepare a particular manuscript. So I hope you understood how we should start with a good idea and a refined research question so that a good study can be done, a correct data analysis can be planned and done, as a result of which a good manuscript can be prepared. Now, we'll have a few more slides before we wind up and take your questions. Here, this website is called Equator Network. You can go to Google and just type Equator Network. This website opens up. This is a website that is actually about enhancing the quality and transparency of healthcare research. On this website, you will find different reporting guidelines. These are actually writing tools. They are not just checklists, but they are writing tools. For example, if you're writing, not conducting, if you're writing a randomized controlled trial, how do you write? You would write it using a reporting guideline called CONSORT, Consolidated Statement of Reporting Trials. So you go to this website and you click on CONSORT. The document opens up where you can see different headings under which you should write your clinical trial. Same way, if it's an observational study, for example, you're doing a cross-sectional study, you go to STROB. You go to STROB and click, and there are variants of STROB for cross-sectional studies, for cohort studies. If you're doing, if your study design is diagnostic, is that of a diagnostic accuracy study, then you go and click on STARD, STARD. There you get a checklist of every heading and subheading that should be there for you to write that particular type of study manuscript. Same for case report, clinical guidelines. Now, do you know there are almost 300 plus or maybe 400 plus guidelines available on this website? Don't get overwhelmed. Let's be just focused on what we want. Go to that site, find that particular document. If you're doing a systematic literature review, which we will cover in one of these weeks, you have to use PRISMA guideline to write a particular, to prepare your systematic literature review. Same applies for protocol, you have Spirit and many other. So please go to this website, and as time allows, you can on these reporting guidelines and go through the content. For example, now this is the last example. For example, you have planned a clinical trial with your supervisor or with your team, and you have conducted it, and now you want to prepare a manuscript. So this is the checklist that's available on Equator Network when you click on Consort. This is the checklist that tells about the title, registration, introduction, the various aspects of methodology, the trial design, the trial setting, eligibility criteria, your comparison group, the outcome, the randomization, the blinding, the statistical method. Every item that is described needs to be elaborated, and on the right side, do you see reported on page number? So this particular checklist should be used to write your manuscript and should be submitted as a supplementary file when you're submitting to the journal, mentioning where each of these items are mentioned. So you can write a very good methodology section only if you have planned and conducted a proper research. So before you plan a study, please identify this particular checklist and read through it, what all information you will be needing to prepare your manuscript. The results section, the discussion section, all these sections mention the items that should be there, and the page number where you have written should be given before you submit this particular checklist. If it is a clinical trial research that you're writing, a consort flowchart is also needed where you will mention so that your editor and reviewer has an idea how many patients were enrolled, how many were allocated, how many patients came up for follow-up, how many dropped out, and how many did you take up a final analysis and whether your analysis was per protocol analysis or intention to treat analysis. Now we are coming to the final section of our presentation where we will look at common mistakes and how to avoid them. This is a very interesting scoping review. What does this scoping review talk about? It has actually done a literature mapping and scoping review of common errors that are seen in biomedical manuscripts. I'm not going to list all of them, but if I have to put them together, there are almost 7 or 8 tables in that particular study under different headings. Putting them together, some of the most common mistakes that are seen in biomedical manuscripts is lack of impressive title, abstracts that do not reflect the paper correctly. These are reasons why your paper might get rejected. Discrepancies between abstract and main text. Inadequate duration of follow-up. For example, you have done a surgical procedure with bone grafting. Instead of reviewing and reporting the primary and secondary outcomes after 9 to 12 months, you are reporting after 3 months. You're submitting a paper to publish after 3 months. So that's wrong. Inadequate duration of follow-up should be avoided. Then poor grammatical writing and lack of coherence throughout the study and lack of consistency throughout the writing are one of the few common mistakes that are seen. Other mistakes include another reason why your paper might get rejected, might have already been rejected, could be that you've written a beautiful paper, an impactful paper, but you have submitted it to the wrong journal. So your journal not matching, your paper not matching the scope of the journal, then the author not following the author guidelines given in the journal, such as the way to give in-text citation or how to prepare a reference list, the font style, overall formatting, these are equally important. Because it's said that if you are not careful about these simple things, the editor and the reviewer can, if they see error in your citation, reference, font style, consistency, formatting, etc., the reviewer and the editor might even think that for something so simple, if you're careless, maybe your data is also flawed. There could be more doubts that can arise. So please make sure that each and every item that you present in your manuscript is checked and rechecked. Duplication of previous work is another reason that papers get rejected. Then, of course, outdated and unoriginal or uninteresting research topics. So as we come towards the end of today's session, to understand more about the things that we have mentioned, there are certain global guidelines that you can read. For example, International Committee of Medical Journal Editors to read more about manuscript standards and authorship. Equator Network guideline to understand what are the different reporting guidelines that you will use based on your study design. If you're doing an industry link or pharmaceutical company linked biomedical research, you could read about good publication practice guidelines. You could also go through COPE guidelines, which is the Committee on Publication Ethics. So with all these things together, today we saw how we can start from an idea, refine it into a research question using the FINER concept, search databases, and come to prepare a protocol, get ethical approval, plan your statistics in advance, discuss your study with a statistician to plan your study and calculate the correct minimum sample size, conduct your study, and then prepare your manuscript in the format that we saw. So thank you very much for your patient listening, for your presence. I'm open to questions. Please let me know how we'll be taking the questions. You can reach me on LinkedIn. My name is Dr. Betsy Joseph, so you can find me on LinkedIn at Dr. Betsy Joseph, and I'll be available here for the next 4 more weeks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, madam. Today's session is very informative, and I would like participant to ask the question. This session also live on YouTube. nearby around 230 participants are present on YouTube, madam.
Okay,
I
that's
found
great to
some
know.
questions on in chat box.
Okay. Do we
How
have-
can we check whether our research idea is already done or published?
Okay, right?
Can you hear me, madam?
Yes, yes, sir. I can hear you.
Yeah.
So how can we see if our study has already been published? We have to identify that particular study, divide it into keywords, go to PubMed and search. Go to Google Scholar and search if that particular study has been published. You can do that search using keywords relevant to that particular topic.
Yeah. Next question is, what type of study design should we select for common postgraduate research projects?
Okay, so I think this question was posted before we started the session, because in the session we saw how to identify a good research question using. So please, to answer this question, I'll say please use the FINER concept so that we know that we are doing a relevant study and it can be published. So discuss with your supervisor as a postgraduate student, and before you go for discussion to your supervisor, do a literature search, go to PubMed or go to Elicit AI or Consensus AI,
Yes.
do a search on your topic, and then go to your supervisor with a research question that fulfills FINER concept.
Yeah. Yes. Other question is, madam?
Sorry to interrupt, Dr. Prasanjit, please mute your mic. Dr. Prasanjit, yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir. Other question is, what are common mistakes postgraduate students make while planning their research?
Yes, sir. So that's a good question. Thank you for the question. The biggest mistake we have seen is they are always in a hurry. Although 6 months would have been given to identify your topic and prepare an outline, maybe they will take only last 1 week. Then what happens? They hurry. They do not do a proper literature search. They do not identify a relevant research question. There is no proper statistical pre-analysis planning. And then in a hurry, if you start a study without properly preparing a protocol, then you are not able to do a proper study and you're not able to do a good publication. So the common mistakes and the best way to avoid these mistakes is start in advance, do a good literature search, talk to your supervisor, see what research was already done in your institution, because you already have an idea about feasibility once it's a done study. So don't do the same study, do a continuation of that study maybe. So please plan in advance and do a good literature search so that you avoid these mistakes.
Yeah. Next question is, what ethical approval are needed before starting the data collection?
What ethical approval are there? Is that the question, sir? Yeah. So it depends on your institution and it depends on the study design that you're doing. If you're doing a literature review, you do not have to go to the ethical committee to get your approval. If you're doing an original research, whether it's animal study, human studies, or in vitro studies using human elements or animal elements, you will have to get ethical approval. So you have to prepare a protocol, meet your supervisor, go to your scientific research committee. They will approve the scientific validity of your protocol. Then you go to the ethical committee to get clearance for your study. And only after that, you should start your study.
Yes, madam. Next question, shall I ask, madam? Next question?
Yes, please. Please
Yes.
ask, sir.
Thank you. What are the key steps to conduct an effective literature review without getting over information by the volume of information? So,
Yes.
means where to refer the number of literatures.
Yes,
So,
it's
how
as a
to do-
beginner, it's very overwhelming to see a lot of references that are coming up and you don't know what to pick, what not to. So, number one, break your research question into key concepts and search the literature using those key concepts. Look for references, articles that are published recently. Look for articles that have been cited very often. So relevance and recency will be one thing you can use to identify what study to pick and what not to pick. And very important, when you do a search like on PubMed or anywhere else, you can give a filter of a timeline. So maybe relevant studies done in last 5 years or 3 years to start with. So that will help you identify lesser number of articles from which you can start your literature search.
The other question is, what advice would you give students to balance coursework, research, and personal development? It's a very nice question, I think.
Yes, sir. And I would say planning. Have an idea of where you want to reach and have an idea, a self-assessment of where you are today. So that will give you enough time to plan things, identify your weakness and your strengths. So planning and doing things ahead is the only way out to keep a balance between these three things. And of course, be in touch with your supervisor, your seniors, and your mentors. That will really help you go a long way.
Yeah. Other question asking Dr. Mobile, is it necessary to get ethical approval for a retrospective study too?
Now, if it's yes, ideally, if it's a retrospective study and you're taking information from your institution or from any database, ethical approval is needed.
Yes. Any other question?
Sir, is this presentation available on YouTube?
Yes, sir.
Is this presentation available on YouTube?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, sir.
So,
Uh,
are there any more questions?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dr. Vaibhav,
Yes,
and
sir, yes.
all the participants enthusiastically participate in this. And Dr. Bestie, as usual, best of the what I have listened one of the presentation again. On the behalf of the organizing team, I sincerely thank our respected registrar sir, Dr. Bengal sir, for his guidance and leadership by mentoring the today's section, by other way around, by suggesting what should we do rather than the idea. Think of the manuscript, that is the, I can say, highlighting point. What you have also take hold of that as a point and go ahead with that. So I can say that this is the first session of our 5 lecture series, where the session is really highly informative, I should say, and will certainly help the family members, our faculty members, postgraduate students, and obviously the research scholars who are budding. Now, I know I can make it out that some questions were really basics, where to start, that also be needed, and some questions were really how to manage the work and research balance, that also we'll try to elaborate. So I can say that most of the crowd which are listening, that is of the balance side, where the faculties and students also were taken part in that, and hopefully we'll get the good response in our next sessions also, which as every Thursday we are conducting. And obviously this will strengthen the quality of the research planning initially and academic writing also, while deciding what exactly we are going ahead with that. I'm really thankful to the members, that is management council member who attended, these senate members, and our faculty members and the dean academics, public madam, officiating dean Galo madam, all the deans in the faculties and the members who have attended this. And I'm really thankful to all the participants who have really made a little more efforts in participating by giving these questions and getting their ideas at this stage. No doubt, research is in search of something. It is continuously going on. 1 or 2 hour session will definitely sensitize them, and they will jump in the ocean of these ideas where they can come out with an diamond out of that. That's I always say. So I look forward for the continuous support of this, and thank you so much again, and we look forward to the next session also. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you, sir. Bye-bye.